17, 18, I was the same, hugely self-conscious, very uncomfortable in it.
Sure. Well, I think the first mistake that I did actually is I went to a hairdresser's rather than a barber's. And the reason I done this is because I was growing my hair out long, and I thought, well, actually, hairdressers are more experienced in this, but actually, I don't think that was the right advice, really. And I should have gone to a barber and just spoken frankly about my hair loss. My GP sort of said you can use finasteride, but one of the side effects is that you might grow tits.
Yeah.
So short little bursts of small pain. And
you're sitting up in a chair at this point. It's like you're not lying down on an operating table. You're sitting up in a chair.
At this point, I was sat upright, having this.
And everything's going on behind you, presumably.
Everything's going on. I think it was an air gun, I think they used, but I was deliberately not looking.
Welcome to The Noble Barber. This is a podcast for barbers by barbers, cutting through the crap of the industry. We all want to know how our businesses can run better. I want to talk to people who've done it, messed it up and got it right second time round, and can tell us the way that you and I can make our businesses better.
Here I am with Alek, and Alek is... welcome, mate. Thank you. Alek is coming along to talk to us today about, hair transplants. Obviously, I have no experience. I've experienced losing my hair, but not the experience that you've had, Alex. But welcome.
Thank you very much.
We were just talking before that this has been a kind of 2-year journey from, starting the transplant process to now. I'm interested in that first bit prior to the leading you up to making that decision, that you kind of started seeing your hair loss, you'd started kind of compensating, working it out. How does that work for you when you started realizing that your hair was starting to thin a bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, I'll talk firstly about when it first began. So I started losing my hair around 16, 17. At the time, no 16, 17-year-old wants to lose their hair at all. It made me feel a bit subconscious about, the way I look. And as you say, I tried compensating and moving my hair perhaps to the side and hoping, that gust of wind doesn't take it. It was something, I wanted to address. So I looked at certain options available.
So, but from 16 onwards, was it very much kind of, have you got a collection of photographs of haircuts that you were trying to cover up? I mean, not quite the pretzel or the comb over, but can you look at them now and think, I wish someone had...
Oh, totally.
Obviously, if as a guy, if you'd gone into a barber shop, what advice would you have liked at that stage of your hair loss? 17, 18, I was the same, hugely self-conscious, very uncomfortable in it.
Sure. Well, I think the first mistake that I did actually is I went to a hairdresser's rather than a barber's. And the reason I done this is because I was growing my hair out long, and I thought, well, actually, hairdressers are more experienced in this, but actually, I don't think that was the right advice, really. And I should have gone to a barber and just spoken frankly about my hair loss to them. So that's one area.
And would you have found that easy? When you were talking to the hairdresser, were you saying, I'm conscious of my hair loss, I'm thinning, or were you kind of sitting there as the kind of elephant in the room, not discussing it? Would you have preferred them to have come to you and said, I can see your hair's thinning a little bit, it'd be better if we go shorter or longer, or did you have that experience, or?
Well, actually, the hairdresser, he was a bloke, and he was losing his hair himself. So he sort of addressed the elephant in the room and said, I understand your struggles, and perhaps this haircut would suit you. But going back and looking at my photos, the long hair, I don't think is a great look.
No.
I think really, if you want to keep the volume and density, you'll know better yourself in the world of hair. But I think going shorter probably would have been a better look for me back then.
Oh, no, I think me, 19, 20s, starting out in the hairdressing industry, I had my hair long in a ponytail. I did every classic mistake. And it was only when I kind of started cropping it and shaved my head that I got more comfortable with, this is what I look like. And being markedly older than yourself, Alex, the the transplant procedures available in the kind of 80s and 90s were, plugs and dolly, and they were, and financially, inaccessible. Whereas obviously for you now, that's changed. So when did you start? How old were you when you started looking at the transplant option?
I sort of had it in the back of my mind that I would wait until my hair loss sort of stopped and wouldn't be so aggressive, because I felt if I'm going to do a hair transplant, then I just want to do the one.
And that was, when did you feel your hair loss started to change?
Yeah, sure. So I think my hair loss started really stopping about 28 years old. And then I thought, actually, this is a brilliant time. This coincided with COVID. And I always had a fear of, hair transplants, because I also knew that I had to shave all of my hair off. And I really, really didn't want to be...
Yeah, okay. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, that's the first bit of the procedure, is you end up looking a bit like me for a while.
Yeah, no, I really didn't want to have that, to be honest. But when I actually had the buzz cut, it looked great, actually.
Excellent.
So I was quite happy to do it then, once I understood my hair loss had really stopped in its tracks. So that was the best time I felt. But, I think sometimes hair loss keeps going, unfortunately, and takes hold. So I think finding that right moment is a really important task.
Yeah, no, of course.
So perhaps talking to your barber would be useful.
It's not, it's reached a plateau and it's not going further.
Yeah.
So which system... I really haven't followed hair transplant, and I get approached by people a lot from when I'm behind the chair about, what do I know? Which is fairly limited. We've got a few people that we know who are London-based transplant centres. But how's the technique used for you? You said you had to shave your head, but what's the actual process when you're there doing it?
Sure. I mean, there's two real options available to candidates for hair transplants. One is FUT, where they take a strip of hair off the back of your head. The other is FUE, which is follicular unit extraction, where they use a punch and take circular incisions and then remove the graft.
Right.
Now, I took the FUE. I didn't like the idea of having a linear scar on the back of my head. So I went for the FUE, which is tiny circular incisions, little scars that you really can't see. I came across this procedure through my research. My research was centered on Facebook.
Yeah, of course, because that's the other bit, that the industry is rife with, professionals and, so we say, not so professionals. How do you sit there knowing nothing and find the clinic that you're going to use?
Yeah, no, sure, great question. I firstly Googled it, and you come across all of these review websites, but I didn't trust them, to be quite honest with you. You hear a lot about fake reviews. So then that led me on to Facebook, and I found this great group called Hair Loss Conquerors. And this is real people posting their experiences about hair transplants. And
quite a big group, lots of people on there?
Yeah, thousands of members from the UK and beyond. And they're great. You can post the name of the clinic, you can post the name of your surgeon. There's a fantastic search option. So cool. if there was one particular consultant or one particular clinic you're interested in, you can simply search, and it's great. You can see, they post pictures, they post honest reviews. So from this, I decided I want a short list of 3 clinics who I messaged.
And were they from just the work you'd seen pictures of before and after, and you're like, actually, that looks a lot like me in the beginning, I like the result afterwards? How do you thin down to 3 from...
Yeah, certainly. You start understanding patterns of, which the better clinics and which ones are let's say, not to be desired.
And on that site, you're seeing the ones that have gone wrong, the people that are talking about the clinics not to go to. You can see the ones that
very much.
I've certainly seen some that you're kind of like heartbreaking to see the scarring that's gone on and the kind of how poorly it's been kind of finished off. So when you've got you've nailed down your 3 from Facebook, and now you're having to kind of enter the real world, make that next step. What happens when you contact the clinics?
So they provide you like a free observation and recommendation. Typically, they send you a PDF report of how many grafts you'd need to be expecting.
And this is just you're sending them pictures and video or whatever of your recedents or your hair loss.
Yeah. They ask also about whether you're on medication. A number of the clinics, they also enforce that you have to be on finasteride, which I wasn't, and also Rogaine. So they ask you lots of questions about your hereditary hair loss, your medical health, should you have any concerns there. But really.
Had you tried any of the other stuff beforehand? Had you tried kind of any of the drugs, the Rogaine, or any of the lotions and potions and snake oils that are covering the internet for hair loss?
Initially, when I was 17 or so, I did actually go to my GP. My GP sort of said you can use finasteride, but one of the side effects is that you might grow tits. Yeah. I didn't really want to, have this.
A great hairline, but big changes to you.
Yeah, big changes to my body. So I decided against this. They didn't at the time suggest Rogaine. However, during my research at this time, I found this online and I applied this. It's just a foam-based product into your scalp where you're losing the hair. And I found that to be really effective, actually. However, this is effective in that it will stop the hair loss. It won't really grow it back.
Yeah.
I think finasteride would, but like I say, I've not tried that.
There's sacrifice involved there.
No, yeah.
Definitely. So you've been following this process and you did this with each of the 3 clinics? Each one of you were doing this? This online kind of consultation with all 3? Very
much so, yeah. Some of the clinics, they took a long time to respond back to me. They were suggesting things to do with my crown, where I looked at my hairline and I didn't really think I had a problem with my crown.
And just to go, yours is kind of hereditary. You look through your family and there's the same kind of recedence and hair loss. Yeah. You can see it's kind of male pattern baldness.
Yeah, very much. I think it's called widow's peak.
Yep.
Which is ultimately, a V in your hairline that goes back and back on your temples.
Oh, I did that spell for a while as well, mate. Yeah. Okay. So you've got to that stage that you're waiting to hear back from 3 of them. You've seen the process. Is it just on paper, or are you getting kind of video feedback from them? How are they showing you what to do, or are they just making suggestions at that stage?
They give you a PDF and they highlight some areas where you're balding and suggest how many grafts might go into that area. Now, this is all based on a caveat, of course. When you meet with the consultant, then you'll have the hairline drawn on, and the grafts at that point are only an estimation.
Okay. So you slimmed it down from 3, and then what was the thing that made you finally plump for the one you went to?
Yeah, sure. To be honest, having gone through this comprehensive process on Facebook of reviewing them, I sort of had in the back of my mind who my favourite clinic was.
Oh, okay.
And that was Dr. Turan from Few Capilla.
And this is in Turkey?
And yeah, of course, this is in Turkey.
Were all the 3 on your list? Is a lot of the Facebook group Turkey-based, or are there? Yeah,
I mean, the group posts clinics from all over the world. There was some clinics in Mexico popping up.
Oh, okay.
Some in the US, which had great reviews, but I felt actually I didn't need to go all that far.
Big difference in the 3. Did you get kind of estimates? Big difference in the price from the 3 you'd kind of chosen?
Yeah, quite a big variance actually. My package came to 3,500. I had another clinic in Turkey wanting 7,000.
Oh, okay.
But I felt, having gone through the reviews, there was no additional value of going to the other clinic other than perhaps the brand.
Yeah. Okay, so you've made your final decision now. That was 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years pretty much to the day.
So that was lockdown, travel was over, so you could mask up, get on a plane and go to Turkey.
Very much.
Did you do anything before that, or do you just book your ticket and arrive at the clinic?
Yeah, just book your ticket. The clinics, they all offer like an all-inclusive package whereby you're met at the airport with a chap holding your name. You jump in a private taxi. They take you to the hotel. Although I flew in around 7 p.m. and on that day, I think then we went for some blood tests beforehand. They checked me for hepatitis, for example, make sure I don't have anything I shouldn't before the hair transplant. Obviously, they're working with blood, so that's important. So very much all inclusive.
So 7 o'clock, you're in Turkey, you've done your blood test, you're sitting in the hotel room. Were you on your own, or did you go with anybody?
No, I decided just to go by myself.
And how are you feeling the night before? How's that?
A bit.
Was it excited? Are you a bit kind of kid before Christmas, or a bit of nerves?
No, definitely a bit apprehensive with the procedure. In the end of the day, it is a medical procedure.
Of course,
but I found confidence in my research that I'm going with a good consultant. And I think I posted something on the group, and I had a load of fellow chaps losing their hair, and they wished me the best. So I felt really quite confident in going in for it.
Excellent. So next morning the car comes and gets you, and you head to the clinic.
Yeah, well, you can't start the day without breakfast, Tony.
Excellent.
So you have breakfast, and then you're carted off to the clinic where you meet the consultant. In my case, it was Dr. Turan.
And they shave your head at that point. Is that the start of the experience?
Not at first. They sort of draw on your head.
Okay.
They try to decide on where your hairline ought to be. I wanted a natural one,
they have. They've done a really good job on it. It's not, some you see that are a little bit too straight line right across, and it in itself looks artificial. But no, they've done a very good job.
Thank you. No, I sort of wanted to maintain the V to some degree and soften it down. Yeah. So they draw that hairline on. Once you're happy, then they take you to another room where they inspect the back of your head, the donor area, where they use a microscope. Really impressive technology, actually, they have. But what struck me as really important at that moment is when I was sat down with the consultant, he was really reassuring and helped me manage my expectations. He explained, your hair is fine. So you're never going.
The donor hair is
You're never going to have a big afro full of hair. That's not what we do. So I think setting expectations at that time is also really important. I enjoyed that part of the process. And then of course, then they decided the hair must come off from everywhere, so they completely shaved me down.
So is that with a blade or just a clipper? Is it shaved kind of like smooth like mine, or is there?
I think it was a clipper.
So it's very, very short, so you don't look like you've got any hair on. And then they just can really see the scalp and the individual hair follicles. Oh, amazing. So talk us through the next bit, because this is I purposely didn't research this much before we had this conversation, because I'm intrigued, and I think a lot of the questions are about the actual procedure, how it works, and the aftermath. So you're now sitting there, you've got your hairline drawn on, you know what your expectation is, they've shaved your head, and the actual kind of proper work's about to start.
And this is the bit I was most apprehensive about, to be honest. I was most apprehensive about the injections. I hate a small little pinprick, so the idea of this was quite daunting, really. So you're completely shaved. You go into the operating room. Now in my work, I do a lot of work in operating theatres, so I was looking out for the sterility of the room.
Yeah, of course. And you were feeling comfortable?
And I was feeling really comfortable, yeah. It had a really nice workflow to it. Everyone sort of knew their roles and positions, so I was reassured there. And then they asked me to take a seat, and they'll be administering the anesthesia. At this point, I actually paid extra for something called painless anesthesia.
Right.
And this feels like you being slapped on the back of your head with a ruler.
Okay.
So yeah, short little bursts of small pain. And
you're sitting up in a chair at this point. It's like you're not lying down on an operating table. You're sitting up in a chair.
At this point, yeah, I was sat upright, being having.
And everything's going on behind you. Presumably.
Everything's going on. I think it was an air gun. I think they used, but I was deliberately not looking at this part of the procedure. So I think they've done that for around 20 or so times. And then they say, now we're going to administer the injections, and boy, they hurt a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
So this is to numb the whole head
Yeah, so the initial step was to sort of pre-numb it, I suppose. And then they administered the local anesthesia through injections, and they were quite rough, actually.
Oh,
if I'm honest. So I'm glad I paid for the painless anesthesia before that.
So even with that, you were still aware there was stuff going on uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I'm not sure how many they administered in the back of my head, but the first 3 you could feel, and then after that, you knew they were injecting in you, but you couldn't feel it.
You couldn't feel it. And then they're taking, at that point, then they're using this kind of this process to take out the hair follicles in the back of in the donor area.
Yeah. So now the whole.
And you're feeling nothing at that point.
That's right. So now they use a punch to extract the grafts.
Yep.
And after some time, I couldn't feel anything. At one point, I think I fell asleep during this process.
Oh, okay.
Of them pulling out the grafts.
And that's over, how long do they spend taking out the grafts? Is that is that a couple of hours?
I'm just trying to think how the day was split.
Mate.
No, that's okay. So I believe that it was a 2-day process. In the morning, they took out the grafts.
Brilliant.
And then in the afternoon, they implanted the grafts. So yeah, it took a whole morning really of them extracting grafts from my head, and they don't just come out as ones. The follicles can have, the grafts can have 3 follicles in them. So you have one sort of root that sort of splits onto 4 different hairs.
Okay.
And you need a nice mix of all of these to maintain a nice hairline. So there's a real art behind it. So whilst they're removing these grafts, you have a team of technicians that are then sorting these grafts into multiples of 1, multiples of 2, and so forth.
Oh, okay. So there is quite an artistry at that point to build your hairline. It's not just remove and reapply it.
From my understanding, then what's important for them is having the singular grafts, because then they can put that in the front of your hairline, which looks a bit more natural.
Okay.
You don't want to have great density at the front of your hair, which is understandable.
So this has gone on. You've left the clinic that first day, presumably well bandaged up and keeping the wounds quite clean, presumably.
Yeah, trying to keep sterility. They give you some nice tips. For example, don't wear a jumper or a shirt that you have to pull over your head.
Yep.
Take in a shirt that you can unbutton and undress yourself. So there are some practical tips on the internet you can have a look at to help with that.
So how does the second day plan out? So that on the first day, presumably you're a bit shattered that night. You're a bit shell-shocked by it. You take some painkillers and go to sleep, do you?
Yeah, very
much so.
Doesn't
sound like you're set for a night out on the town.
No, definitely not.
So the second day, you're going back for kind of more of the same, a second process, or?
Yeah, and then it's really just the same.
They take doning in the morning, and
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So that process is over. Sorry, I'm really wanting to just make sure I've got it.
Nice.
So, that process is over. Next morning, you're off back to the airport, arriving back in London. What happens next between a head full of bandages and this great hairline that I'm looking at now?
So after the first day, they send you home with a big bag of drugs. And that's so you don't get infections. So that's really good that it comes with that. Before jetting off to the airport, they give you a wash down where they actually wash the whole area, which I was quite surprised they done at that moment, thinking it's really quite a sensitive area. And then of course they bandage you up. They don't put a hat on you as such, just a bandage around your head. And then off to the airport you go. At the time it was raining in Turkey, so I was carrying I was really hoping the rain wouldn't fall on my newly implanted grafts. And but the trick here really is not to scratch it, because it gets quite itchy at this point
as the skin's knitting back together. And
so another thing, in addition to the drugs, they give you a big bottle of saline water.
Okay.
And that sort of sprays out as a mist, and that's really comforting, actually.
Okay.
Then
and then the convalescent period after that, how long does it take till kind of bandages are off and you can walk around?
I think the bandages came off when I got back to the UK, and then I think after the 5th day, then they wanted me to then wash the scalp. The previous days, I was spraying foams to help the healing process.
Sure. And at the moment, then your scalp still obviously looks shaved.
Yeah,
but very red, very sore, presumably.
Yeah, very red, very sore. When I came back, I really had like a really swollen head. It was probably double the size.
Wow.
Which is understandable. It's quite a big treatment.
Going on.
There's a lot happened to it. But that soon settles, and the drugs, they really help. But like I mentioned, one of the key issues is not scratching your head or banging it around. Also, have your sleeping position. You have to be at somewhat of an upright position, so you don't sleep on your grafts.
And this is over the first kind of week or two.
That's right. Yeah, about a week. You have to really look. Protect
now,
it.
From my mind, kind of 2 weeks later, you should start. I know when I shave my head, certainly within 3 or 4 days, I can start feeling more stubble there. How long did it take you to feel confident to start kind of touching and feeling where your hairline was? And
so
because that must have been quite an exciting. That was hopefully worth the whole kind of journey so far.
Well, I think after the 7th day, I've still got a scab full of head, and at this point they want you to wash the scabs off, and then underneath, then you have some shoots popping up, which is really exciting to see. But washing those scabs off and somewhat rubbing your head that you've been protecting for the last week, that's quite scary. But they actually came off really easily with the shampoos that the clinic provide.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, so I mean, you sound overall, I really appreciate you coming and talk to me about it. Overall, even though some of it sounds kind of quite hardcore, it's been a very well worth journey for you. And now, so that's 2 years ago. Your hairline does look amazing. How do you feel about it now, 2 years later, thinking about what you've been through, what your head's been through?
I mean, it was certainly a bold move to go through that process, but really happy with it. But research is just so important. So as we're finding a barber, for example, you have to do your research. You have to find the right one that meets your needs.
But as your hair was growing back, did the barber that was looking after you, did you have that relationship of, like, I've just had a hair transplant, but you need presumably the back's just as sore as the top, where you've got scarring at the back as well. Yeah. How long afterwards did you find yourself going for a haircut?
I think it was about 2 months after. The first process is that actually your hair all falls out, the newly implanted hairs all fall out.
Oh, wow.
So you're sort of back at square one, but no, that's part of the process. That's what should be expected.
But they pre-warned you didn't have some terrible morning where you thought it all failed. Yeah,
that would have been awful if they didn't warn me. But no, I was certainly expecting, you know, this to be part of the process. And then after 2 months, you know, I went to my barber and explained, you know, that I had my hair transplant, and she was excellent. She understood.
And the scarring was gone after 2 months. It just looked like, well, kind of like it does now. It's looking good.
Yeah. I know, actually, I had a buzz cut at the time, and it looked great.
Excellent.
I thought, what have I done? I've just spent so much money going to Turkey, and now I quite like myself with a buzz cut. So you never know, maybe I'll have a buzz cut again sometime.
Well, no, but it's definitely been a good thing. Yeah. And kind of confidence-wise, do you feel a difference?
Yeah.
Even kind of 2 or 3 year, you know, your 27, 28-year-old self compared to now?
Yeah, definitely feel more confident. Funny to say that I have more hair when I'm 33 years old than I did when I was 21. So no, hair does give confidence, and I would thoroughly recommend hair transplants. Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously I've gone through 30 plus years of hair loss, and I've now kind of reached the point where, you know, I'm out there and I'm very kind of okay with it. But certainly my kind of, you know, my 20, 25, 26-year-old self would have definitely embarked on it, seeing the results you've got. And is there anything that, as from a barbering industry, that we could be more helpful with as a final sign out? Is there anything that would have made it easier for you?
Yeah, probably perhaps just with when I explained earlier, I went to a hairdresser and I kept, you know, a long hairstyle. And I actually think that was the wrong advice at the time given to me by that particular hairdresser. And I think I ought to have gone to a barber, and I had hoped that they would actually
give you that firm advice of where it's, if it's thinning, where it's shorter.
Yeah, and what hairstyles would best meet my needs where I'm receding.
Beauty. Well, mate, I really hope we've covered everything. I really appreciate you coming and talking. You know, it would be very easy to be talking to someone from a transplant centre. It would be very easy for them to be doing their own kind of PR campaign. And I just felt it was, for me, much more interesting to talk to you through the journey that you've had. And I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alex. Really good stuff.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Noble Barber. If you liked it, please do like and subscribe. If you've got comments of what we should be doing in future, please give us your questions and we'll try and find an expert to talk to. Or if you're the expert and you want to come on here and help, stay in touch, we'll get you on. Come and join us on the sofa.